Hello, my name is Grace Shirlitz. I did my presentation on the secretary bird. So, like all of our birds, they are in the phylum Chordata and in the class Aves. Hopefully I'm saying these words right. Where they differ, though, is that they're in the order Falconiformes, which that's diurnal birds of prey, meaning birds of prey that are more active in the daytime, and the family Accipitridae, which are like eagles, hawks, and kites. Their common name is a secretary bird, and then their scientific name is Sagittarius serpentarius, which translates to archer of snakes. There is some debate over where their common name came from. What's mostly accepted is they think that the old English naturalist scientists who discovered these birds thought they looked like their secretaries, looked like they were wearing little pants, and they used quill pens back then, and they thought that the plumage at the back of these birds' head looks like they have a quill pen tucked behind their ear. These guys are found in Africa, below the Sahara Desert. They are more found in savannas and grasslands. They can live in like semi-deserts or lightly wooded areas, but they do prefer the more sparse environments. So they are more active during the day, but most of the time is spent preening or resting in the heat of the day. Once it cools off more towards the afternoon, they do travel quite a lot. Even though they can fly, they don't fly a whole lot compared to other birds. Their main mode of transportation is terrestrial, just walking and running. They can travel around 20 to 30 kilometers a day. Usually the birds do have a roost that they return to at night, but some have been seen to be nomadic when prey is scarce. Secretary birds are the only birds in the genus Sagittarius. I put together some of its close relatives on the screen here. So on the bottom right is an African harrier hawk. Out of all these pictures, this is the only one that is in the same order and family as a secretary bird. You can kind of see how it's similar in the face. It has a similar tint around the eyes, the kind of reddish orange and the more grayish blue feathers. However, it doesn't have that long plumage behind its head, and it doesn't have quite as much black coloration towards its tail end and its legs. Also, the secretary bird has much longer legs than the harrier hawk. On the far left, I have the gray-crowned crane, and then right next to it is the red-legged Surima. While these guys aren't in the same order as a secretary bird, they do have some similarities in that they have longer legs. Also, all of these guys do live in Africa, so they could be seen in the same environment. The gray-crowned crane is clearly very different, with the big golden crest on its head and the more long, loose feathers around its neck. And then the red-legged Surima has that kind of plumage or whisker-like feathers towards the front of its face. It doesn't have any of that plumage towards the back of its head like the secretary bird does. And again, it's missing that dark coloration on its legs and its tail. Also within the secretary bird species, males and females look about the same. There isn't really a consistent difference. In some of the resources I was looking at, it did say that the tail feathers can be longer and the plumage behind the head can be longer and bigger in males, and that the females generally are a little bit smaller, but it is very hard to tell the difference. Secretary birds are mostly silent. They only really make noise in courtship displays. It sounds like a very deep croak or growl. I can't really do it. I tried. It's not doesn't come out very well, so I'm just gonna play a video in a minute or a little bit of audio. The parents also communicate with their hatchlings in a similar way, but it is much softer and not as deep sounding, as I'm gonna play in just a moment. Just like their scientific name suggests, they do eat snakes. However, they are not their main diet, despite that they're well known for hunting snakes. The majority of what they eat are small arthropods like insects, scorpions, and also small mammals. They'll strike their prey with their feet, stunning it first, before delivering a final blow with its beak at the back of their head, or just eating it if it's a small insect, and then they usually swallow it whole. However, they do, if you look at their beak, it is quite similar to hawks and falcons, so if needed, they can tear at their prey to make it into more manageable pieces. Males don't typically fight over females and vice versa. It's more Similar to peacocks in a way where there is a display involved, the males will perform an elaborate flight display, kind of diving down at her, and then sometimes they do land next to each other and do something similar to cranes do, where they'll stand next to each other and kind of bob their necks up and down in a sort of dance. They do pair for life, they're monogamous. Once they do pick a mate, they will usually make a roost or a nest in a high up tree, usually an acacia tree, so it's thorny and it creates like a nice protection for their hatchlings. They usually have around 1 to 3 eggs, and the breeding season is usually in the dry season. So other fun facts, the adults don't have natural predators, however their hatchlings and their eggs are prey for other predatory birds. Their legs are twice as long as any other ground birds who have similar body mass as them. They also lack grasping toes. So if you look at that picture of their feet that I included here, you can see that their toes are pretty short and thick, and so it acts as a good tool for striking their prey. They also look like they have eyelashes. These are actually modified feathers, and it is believed that these developed and evolved over time due to their kicking tactic for catching prey. They think the kicking probably kicked up some dust into their face, and so these long eyelash-like feathers keeps the dust out of their eyes. They're also one of only 2 terrestrial birds of prey. The other one is called the caracaras. They are seen as quite an important bird in South Africa. They represent pride because of their more regal appearance, their tall stance, and the black plumage coming up kind of like a crown behind their head, and then protection because of the way that they hunt dangerous snakes. And you can see in this picture at the bottom here that they are on the coat of arms of South Africa. I also found a little folklore story called Why Mongoose Kills Snakes. The mongoose meets a snake who brings him to the nest of a secretary bird and shows him how he can eat the eggs, which upsets the secretary bird. And so feeling guilty, the mongoose vows that he's going to kill any snakes that he'll come across from then on, and the secretary bird does the same. It also explains in the story that this is why secretary birds make their nests in such high trees and usually thorny trees to protect their hatchlings from snakes. So for conservation, the IUCN recently changed the status of secretary birds to endangered in 2020. This is mostly due to habitat loss because of the building of roads or the development of suburban areas. So back in 1968, they were placed as a protected species under the Africa Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. They also have some reserves set up for them right now, but it is kind of a difficult task to take on protecting the species because some of them are nomadic and so they don't stay in the same area. I found a very interesting research article from 2016 that was looking at the force of secretary bird kicks. So one of the downsides of this study was that they only used one bird, but I think this is still an important study to look at. The time that the secretary's bird foot was actually in contact with whatever they were striking was only about 15 milliseconds. And the force they measured in body weights, which came to about 5.1 on average. They compare this to the force used in birds from Galliformes and ratites when they're moving, like this force of their feet on the ground. And with them, it was only about 2 or 3 body weights. They also found that because their legs are so long, it does kind of dampen the ability to run and walk, which showed that these long legs are mostly evolved for the kicking action to catch prey. They also suggested that we should look into more foot and eye coordination with these birds to see how well they're able to kind of judge the distance and be able to strike where needed. So especially interesting because they compared secretary birds to something called a terror bird, which is a prehistoric bird that lived in the Cenozoic era. They think that these terror birds used a similar tactic in kicking to catch prey. So they think that by studying secretary birds in the future, we could learn more about terror birds from them. So in conclusion, despite their scientific name, which means archer of snakes, snakes are really only a small part of their diet. They eat mainly small arthropods and small mammals. They live in Africa south of the Sahara Desert. They're silent outside of their courtship rituals, but when they do vocalize, it is like a deep croak or growl. Unlike most other birds of prey, they lack those grasping feet. They're more specialized for striking prey, and their beauty and hunting skills have made them a symbol of pride and protection. All right, and that's it.